voice is not really you. Have you ever stopped to wonder who's really speaking inside your head? That voice that criticizes, doubts, compares, judges, or tries to control everything, is that truly you? Carl Jung, one of the most influential minds in depth psychology, once said that the human psyche carries many voices, but not all of them belong to our true self. Often, the inner voice we listen to is just an echo of social pressure, unresolved traumas, or the masks we've learned to wear. And if that's true, who are you really? This video will take you deep into this hidden layer of your mind, where you'll start to separate your true self from the mental noise you've mistaken as you for so long. If this topic is already making you reflect, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us grow and bring you even more eye-opening content like this. Topic 1. The origins of your inner voice. Where does it really come from? Our inner voice is one of the most constant companions in our daily life. It narrates, judges, questions, and reacts, often without us realizing that it operates on autopilot. But few ever stop to question, where does this voice actually come from? Is it truly our essence, or is it just a mental echo shaped by years of conditioning? Carl Jung believed that much of what we think is ours is actually a composite of external influences. From early childhood, we begin absorbing voices, those of parents, teachers, religious figures, and authority figures. These voices don't just instruct us, they become internalized and form the scaffolding of our inner dialogue. When you hear that voice criticizing your choices or doubting your dreams, it's worth asking, whose voice is it, really? Often, it's your father's harsh tone, your teacher's disapproval, or society's rigid expectations replaying in your mind like a broken record. This phenomenon is deeply rooted in the collective unconscious, a term coined by Jung to describe the inherited reservoir of human experience. Much of your inner voice operates from this collective layer, carrying beliefs and patterns that are not individually yours but passed down generationally. Our culture plays a significant role in shaping that inner monologue. In societies where competition and perfection are valued, people often develop inner voices that push for overachievement and punish vulnerability. It becomes less about intuition and more about performance. Then comes the voice of trauma. Past emotional wounds leave energetic imprints that later become internal voices, often whispering fear, guilt, or inadequacy. These voices don't reflect your truth. They are echoes of pain you haven't yet healed. Jung pointed out that the mind splits itself to cope with unresolved pain. This fragmentation leads to conflicting internal voices, some of which protect you, others that sabotage you. But neither of them is your authentic self. They're just survival mechanisms. As we grow older, we unconsciously cling to these voices because they feel familiar. We confuse familiarity with truth. But comfort in a lie is still imprisonment. This is why self-inquiry is so crucial. It helps us untangle what is truly me from what was given to me. Another layer to consider is the shadow, a concept Jung used to describe the parts of ourselves that we repress or deny. Ironically, much of our inner voice comes from this shadow: guilt, shame, envy, fear. These are not moral failures. They're disowned parts of the psyche calling for reintegration. Have you ever noticed that your inner voice often speaks with urgency and tension? That's because it comes from the mind, not the soul. The soul speaks softly, intuitively, often without words. But the mind shouts because it needs to dominate. When you begin observing your inner voice instead of automatically obeying it, you enter a powerful space of awareness. This is the birth of consciousness. The moment you realize you are not your thoughts. This realization can be shocking. Many people build their entire identity around their thoughts and narrative. To let go of that inner voice feels like losing a part of yourself. But in truth, it's the beginning of meeting your real self. One of the first steps is detachment. When you hear a thought like, "I'm not good enough," don't resist it or believe it, just witness it. Ask, who is saying this? The moment you question the voice, you reduce its power. Children often internalize beliefs like, I must be perfect to be loved, or, I'm a burden. These become inner mantras that shape adult behavior. But these mantras were never consciously chosen. They were programmed. The more unaware you are of your programming, the louder your inner voice becomes. And the louder it gets, the further you move from your authentic self. That's why silence, true inner silence, is healing. It's not emptiness. It's space for the soul to speak. Our obsession with mental noise comes from fear of what we might discover in the silence. But the truth is, only in silence can we hear what was always there beneath the noise, the voice of your essence. Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. It's a journey of unlearning more than acquiring. And one of the first things to unlearn is the belief that your inner voice is you. You don't have to hate your inner voice. It's not your enemy, it's a wounded guide. But you do need to learn when to listen and when to let it pass like a cloud in the sky. Your inner voice might be loud, but your true self doesn't need to scream. It simply is, calm, present, timeless. The more you reconnect with this presence, the less power your false inner voice holds over your life. So the next time that voice rises in your mind, take a breath and ask, is this truly me, or just an old echo I no longer need to carry? Topic 2 of the Ego versus the Self. Jung's warning about false identity. One of Carl Jung's most profound insights was the distinction between the ego and the self. While many people live under the illusion that the ego is their identity, Jung emphasized that it's merely a small fragment of who we truly are. The ego is the mask we wear, the collection of roles, achievements, stories, and labels we accumulate. It tells you, I am a doctor, I am successful, I am a failure, I am this or that. But all of these are just construct. They're not your essence. The self, on the other hand, is something deeper. It's the timeless awareness behind all experience. It doesn't need labels. It simply observes, feels, and exists. It is the eternal witness that remains unchanged, even as your life circumstances shift. The problem begins when we let the ego hijack our inner voice. The ego thrives on comparison, control, fear, and separation. It constantly feeds us thoughts like, you're not enough, you should be doing more, you need to prove yourself. These are not messages from your soul. They are ego-driven narratives that keep you trapped in a cycle of striving and suffering. And worse, we confuse this noise with identity. Jung warned that over-identification with the ego leads to spiritual disintegration. When you live only through the ego, you become disconnected from your true self, from your soul, and from life itself. This disconnection manifests as anxiety, dissatisfaction, or chronic emptiness. You may have external success, but inside there's a void. That void is the absence of self, the silence beneath the ego's constant monologue. The ego also resists introspection. It doesn't want you to observe your thoughts. It wants to stay in control. That's why meditation, therapy, or self-inquiry feel so uncomfortable at first. They threaten the ego's illusion of power. But when you start separating the observer from the voice, something shifts. You realize, wait, I can hear this thought. That means I'm not the thought. I'm the one who hears it. This is the beginning of awakening. This awakening can be subtle or intense. Some experience it through spiritual practices, others through trauma, heartbreak, or deep silence. But once you see through the ego, you can't unsee it. That doesn't mean the ego disappears. It still plays a role. It helps you navigate the world. But the key is to stop letting it define you. Use it as a tool, not as your identity. A healthy ego serves the self. An unhealthy ego replaces the self. That's the difference between living from truth and living from illusion. Sometimes the ego even mimics spirituality. It creates a spiritual persona that seeks approval, superiority, or recognition. But this too is a trap. True spirituality dissolves ego. It doesn't inflate it. The deeper you go within, the more you discover that your real power comes not from proving anything, but from simply being. And that beingness is beyond words, thoughts, or identity. When your inner voice says, "I'm not doing enough," pause. That's ego talking. Your self doesn't measure your worth by productivity. It knows that your value is intrinsic and infinite. Many people live their entire lives without ever meeting their self. They live as personas, roles, and masks, until one day everything collapses, and in that collapse, they finally hear the silence they had been avoiding. This is what Jung called the dark night of the soul, a painful but sacred process where the ego dies and the self is born. It's not destruction, it's liberation. Your inner voice may resist this journey. It will cling to stories, identities, and fears. But the more you listen to your essence, the less you need those crutches. In the end, the ego is not evil, it's just limited. But you are not limited. You are vast, eternal, whole. And once you taste that truth, you'll never settle for the noise of the false self again. Topic 3: The Inner Critic. How your mind becomes your own prison. The inner critic is one of the most persistent voices in the human mind. It's that internal whisper, or sometimes shout, that constantly tells you you're not good enough, not worthy, not ready, not smart, not capable. It sounds like your voice, but it's not your essence. It's a prison guard disguised as your inner guide. Carl Jung believed that much of our suffering comes from the parts of ourselves we don't accept. The inner critic feeds on those parts. It uses your fears, failures, and flaws as ammunition to keep you small. But here's the truth. The inner critic is not your protector, it's your limiter. This voice often originates in childhood experiences. Perhaps you were judged harshly by parents, or made to feel ashamed for expressing yourself. These early wounds create psychological scripts that become the tone of your inner dialogue later in life. The critic also grows stronger in perfectionistic environments. If your worth was tied to performance or obedience, then your inner voice likely developed into a relentless coach that only praises results, not your humanity. And yet, because it sounds like you, it's easy to believe it. The more you identify with the critic, the more it becomes the dominant voice in your inner world. But ask yourself, if I spoke to a friend the way I speak to myself, would they stay? Jung's concept of the complex explains this beautifully. Complexes are emotional clusters in the unconscious that get activated under stress. The inner critic is often a complex, an old wound reactivated, not a truth being revealed. Many people become addicted to self-criticism without realizing it. It gives them a false sense of control. If they criticize themselves first, they think they're protecting themselves from external judgment. But this is a trap. It keeps you in self-sabotage mode. The inner critic doesn't just affect your emotions, it shapes your behavior. It can paralyze your creativity, make you afraid to try new things, or even push you into relationships that reflect your own self-loathing. Even worse, the critic often dresses itself in logic. It presents arguments that seem rational. You're being realistic, you're just avoiding disappointment. Better not to try than to fail. But beneath that logic is fear, not truth. To reclaim your power, you must learn to challenge the voice, not by arguing with it, but by stepping back and observing it without attachment. This shift from identification to observation is the first step toward liberation. One powerful technique is dialoguing with your inner critic. Write down what it says, then respond from your higher self. You'll begin to see how distorted and exaggerated its messages are. Sometimes your inner critic is not even yours. It's the internalized voice of a parent, a partner, a teacher, or an abuser. You've been carrying someone else's pain inside your own mind. Isn't it time to let it go? Healing doesn't mean erasing the voice. It means reducing its authority. The critic may still speak, but you no longer have to believe it. You get to choose which voice leads your life. Jung believed in integrating the shadow, not destroying it. Your critic, too, has a shadow function. It can show you where you need care, boundaries, or healing. but it's a poor leader. It should inform you, not rule you. Ask yourself, what would I do if I didn't believe this inner voice? That question alone can reveal the doors the critic has kept locked for years. Your true self doesn't speak in accusations. It speaks in calm presence, in encouragement, in quiet knowing. The more you connect with this deeper voice, the more your critic fades into the background. Many breakthroughs in therapy happen not when the critic disappears, but when the client finally says, "That voice isn't mine." That's the moment of psychological awakening, the return to selfhood. So if you feel trapped inside your own mind, remember, you are not the prisoner, you're the observer. And you have the key. The door was never locked. It was just held shut by a voice that lost its power the moment you stopped fearing it. Let that inner voice be heard, but don't let it be your master. You're far greater than the noise inside your head. And once you realize that, you'll begin to live in freedom, not fear. Topic 4: A listening to the true self. How to separate the noise from the soul. After understanding the distortions of the inner voice, we reach a deeper question. How can we listen to the true self? How can we distinguish the echo of conditioning from the whisper of the soul? Carl Jung's work points us in that direction. He taught that the true self is not something we create, it's something we remember. Beneath the layers of roles and narratives, there is a core essence that has always been there, waiting to be heard. The problem is that the ego speaks loudly, while the soul speaks softly. The mind yells, the self whispers. That's why silence is essential. Not silence as absence of sound, but silence as presence of awareness. To hear your soul, you need to make space. Space from distractions, from compulsive thoughts, from emotional noise. Stillness is not a luxury, it's a doorway. Without it, the true self remains drowned in noise. One of the first signs that you're hearing your soul is that the message feels expansive, not restrictive. It doesn't push you with fear, it gently pulls you with peace. It's not urgent, it's wise. Unlike the inner voice, the soul doesn't deal in judgment or comparison. It doesn't say, you should be more like them. It says, you are already enough. It brings clarity, not confusion, presence, not pressure. Jung often spoke of synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that guide us. When you align with the true self, life begins to mirror your essence. You feel more flow, more connection, more inner guidance. Meditation, journaling, walking in nature, creative expression, these are all practices that reconnect you with your soul. They quiet the mind and let your deeper intelligence emerge. But it takes courage. The true self doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. It tells you what you need to know. It asks you to let go of illusions and face your truth. Sometimes it's a soft nudge. Sometimes it's a deep knowing in your body. But it's always there, beneath the layers of mental chatter, waiting for you to listen. You'll notice that the soul speaks through feeling, not fear. It moves you toward what feels aligned, not what feels impressive. It invites presence, not performance. A practical way to test this is to ask, does this thought make me feel small or whole? Contracted or open? Judged or accepted? The answers will guide you to the source of the voice. The soul's voice is timeless. It's the same voice that guided you as a child before the world told you who to be. It's the same presence you felt in moments of awe, love, and stillness. Jung believed that healing is not becoming someone new, it's returning to who you were before the world wounded you. The soul is not something to be found, it's something to be uncovered. You don't need to eliminate your thoughts to hear your soul, you need to observe them without merging with them. The more you practice this inner listening, the stronger your connection becomes. At first, it may feel faint, but like tuning a radio, your clarity grows as you fine-tune your awareness. And soon, the voice of your soul becomes unmistakable. Your true self doesn't shout because it doesn't compete. It simply is. And when you live from that place, life becomes more authentic, more grounded, more free. So don't silence your mind to punish it. Silence it to uncover what was always underneath. the gentle voice that says, "You are already home." Topic 5: The Path to Inner Silence. Practices to transcend mental trap. Inner silence is not simply the absence of thoughts, it's the presence of something far more profound: clarity, presence, and connection with the true self. But in a world filled with noise, how do we access this inner sanctuary? Carl Jung once said that your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. This is the essence of inner silence. It is not about escaping the mind, but learning to sit within it without becoming entangled by it. The first step is to understand that silence is not something you force, it's something you allow. The more you chase it, the more it escapes. But when you relax your grip on the need to control your thoughts, space begins to open naturally. One powerful practice is mindful observation. Instead of trying to stop your thoughts, simply watch them. Observe the movement of your mind like clouds passing through the sky. Don't judge, just witness. This witnessing brings detachment. And detachment doesn't mean apathy, it means freedom. You are no longer enslaved by every thought, emotion, or impulse that arises. Another path to silence is through conscious breathing. The breath is the bridge between mind and body, and it brings you back to the present moment. Inhale presence, exhale noise. Simple breathing practices like box breathing, deep diaphragmatic breathing, or alternate nostril breathing can anchor you in a space where the inner voice loses its grip. Journaling is another tool of liberation. When you put your thoughts on paper, they stop swirling in your head. You start to see patterns, triggers, and distortions that once felt invisible. Jung himself kept detailed journals and encouraged reflective writing as a tool for self-discovery. Your thoughts become clearer when you meet them with a pen and open heart. Nature is also a sacred portal to silence. When you immerse yourself in the rhythms of the earth, trees, rivers, birds, wind, you start to feel the inner world soften. Nature doesn't judge, compare, or rush. It simply is. And that presence is contagious. Movement practices like yoga, tai chi, or walking meditation help to discharge mental energy and bring awareness into the body. When you reconnect with your physical form, your mind naturally quiets down. Yet another way to transcend mental traps is through mantra or sound meditation. Repeating sacred syllables like Om, So Hum, or personal affirmations helps to anchor the mind in vibration rather than thought. Silence also grows in spaces of awe and reverence, moments when the beauty of life overwhelms the mind and opens the heart. Music, art, poetry, sunsets, these experiences are gateways to inner stillness. Jung emphasized the importance of rituals and symbols in psychological integration. Creating a sacred space, lighting a candle, or even sitting in silence with intention can awaken the soul's presence. But perhaps the most radical practice is doing nothing. Sitting without distraction, without goals, without stimulation, just being. It sounds simple, but it terrifies the modern mind addicted to busyness. Yet in that emptiness, you find everything. You'll discover that the deeper you go into silence, the more insight arises spontaneously. Solutions come without effort. Clarity emerges without force. Your soul speaks in the quiet. The path of silence is not linear. Some days the mind will be restless, loud, chaotic. That's okay. Silence is not perfection, it's presence. It's the willingness to return again and again to stillness, no matter how often you stray. The ego will resist. It will call silence boring, unproductive, uncomfortable. But that's because silence dissolves the ego's illusion of control. Every moment you choose silence, you reclaim a piece of your power. Over time, silence becomes not just a practice, but a homecoming, a return to the part of you that was never lost, only covered by noise. And in that sacred space, you realize a deeper truth. You were never broken, never behind, never less. You were just distracted from who you've always been. Your inner voice may still appear, but it no longer defines you. The mental traps may still arise, but you no longer fall into them. Because now you have something stronger, a deep, steady silence within you that cannot be shaken. What if the voice you've been listening to all your life was never truly you? What if, behind all the noise, the doubts, and the pressure, there's a deeper, wiser, and calmer version of you, one that has been patiently waiting to be heard? This journey through Jung's insights reminds us that liberation doesn't come from silencing the mind by force, but from recognizing that we are not the mind at all, we are the awareness behind it. When you stop identifying with every thought, you begin to reclaim your true power. You no longer live as a puppet of your conditioning, you live from presence, clarity, and inner truth. That's when the healing begins. That's when life finally starts to feel real, grounded, and meaningful, not because you achieved more, but because you finally remembered who you are beyond the voice in your head. If this message resonated with you, let us know in the comments. What part of this inner journey are you living right now? And if you felt this content helped you shift your perspective, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support helps us awaken even more souls around the world.